Good morning to one and all, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed educators and forward-thinking learners. I am Purva Mishra from Extramarks Education, your facilitator for this session. Honored to be here, and I welcome you all to our webinar series today to explore a transformational paradigm in education. Extramarks Elevate is a thought leadership series on education and technology aimed to serve as a platform for educationists, academicians, technocrats, young achievers, and other stakeholders to share their experience and views on developments and trends in the field of education and technology. Being a leading edtech brand, we at Extramarks are very proud of our journey for the last 15 years and thankful to our 15,000 plus global schools, without whom our journey would not have been this fulfilling at all. Extramarks has revolutionized the way education is perceived and delivered by custom creating learning solutions for the 21st century learners through state of the art technology and empowering teachers with efficient pedagogical methodologies. Extramarks embarks upon a journey of reinventing approaches towards adaptable, equitable, and access education to all. I feel so grateful that today, 14th October, marking our ninth webinar of Elevate series, where we'll be talking about the topic Teaching for the Future, the synergy of critical and design thinking in digital pedagogy. A world where traditional teaching meets the cutting edge of design and critical thinking as we navigate an era defined by rapid technological advances and global challenges, it becomes increasingly imperative to foster a generation of learners who can adapt, innovate, and influence the future. Today, we embark on an intellectual voyage that will unveil the synergy of critical and design thinking, a dynamic fusion that equip learners with the tools to thrive in a world where change is the only constant. We are honored to have with us today a panel of distinguished educators and experts who will shed light on this topic. Let me introduce our esteemed panelists. First and foremost, we have Mrs. Debika Chatterji, Director, Principal of Jbcn International School, Mumbai. With over 25 years of experience in the field of education, she has been very proactive in implementing and channelizing the UN Sustainable Development as a long-term vision of school. She has been recipient of various awards like Iconic Leadership Award, Education Excellence Award, and Progressive Principal Award, and many more under her wings. We welcome you all, ma'am, to the Elevate series of today's. Wonderful, ma'am. Then we have Major General Lalotra, sir, former principal of Mayo College and serving on board of governors of eminent public schools of India. Honored with the President of India Medal, contributed significantly in education, including the founding the Pinewood School in Jammu and Kashmir, achieving remarkable improvement at the 16th principal of Mayo College, in addition to various advisory and board roles in education organization. We welcome you, sir, to our wonderful webinar series for today.
Thank you.
Adding on, we have Ms. Nisha Bhakar, Director of Vishwa Samudra Holdings. Her experience in education has been focused on planning, designing, and reviewing curriculum, developing and implementing on thematic and project-based learning, She was awarded the Best Educationist Award in the year 2012. Ma'am has also been honored as one of Asia's greatest leaders. We welcome you, ma'am, to our Elevate series.
Thank you.
Then we have Poonam Singh Jamwal, ma'am, Director of Extramarks Education. Poonam Singh Jamwal, ma'am, who always believed in inclusive, intuitive, and holistic tech-enabled learning solutions with an immersive approach and measured outcome. We are grateful to have her as a leader guiding us at every path. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
So today we embark on an intellectual voyage help us, as I mentioned, the synergy of critical and design thinking, a fusion that will help learners to thrive in a world. So to kickstart our session, let's delve into the discussion without doing much further ado. I'd like to start with Debika ma'am first. So, ma'am, what is the definition of critical thinking and design thinking, and why specifically these skills are so vital in today's pedagogical world? If you can share some highlight towards for the all the attendees that we have, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Apurva. Thank you. And it's so wonderful to meet the eminent panelists. I don't think I need to define critical thinking and talk about the skills that are needed in the 21st century, because I think as educators, teachers, parents, all of us are very, very aware of the fact that there are problems in this world and we need to find solutions to those problems. It can be something as small as teaching math in grade 1, like I was talking about just before we started, or it can be as big as trying to figure out how to bring peace among the Palestinians and the Israel people. It starts with a problem and the fact that there are human beings involved and the fact that life is precious. That is the only thing that we need to remember as far as thinking skills, problem solving things, critical thinking skills are concerned. I'll share something. I like to share stories from my school. We have what is known as an innovators convention every year. And again, this is primary because I find the brightest sparks in the primary years in our school. Grade 3 child came up with an idea that I want to design a cradle which will move on its own. And I spoke to her and said, why do you think that is important? Why do you need to solve this problem? I have a small brother and my mama in the evening needs to go to the kitchen, and my baby brother starts crying as soon as my mama goes to the kitchen. So I want a cradle that will move with a remote control so that if my mama is busy, she can always use the remote control to ensure that my brother does not cry. It's a very real problem, a very important problem in the child's life, and that needs a solution. And everything that we talk about happens because we understand that there is a problem that needs a solution. So yeah, there is no need to define these ideas. They have been in existence forever. It has nothing to do with 21st century, because I never understand why these skills are needed in the 21st century only. They were not identified in the 21st century. When they were planning to fight the war in the Mahabharata, they were using all these skills anyway. They knew that when the Ramayana was being discussed, they knew that they need collaborative armies in order to defeat the problem that they were faced with. So collaboration and communication and speaking each other's language, understanding, and above all, something that my mother is very fond of, forgiving and forgetting. Along with everything else, if we bring that, I think we'll be able to solve most of the problems that we are trying to grapple with.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing.
Debika is very modest in her approach.
I met her just few days ago, and it blew my mind. I was sitting in the reception, and for her it's a small thing, but I am visiting all the possible schools in the country, and the reception is the face of a school. And the reception was full of children packing for home, and there was a clamor in the reception. So most receptions, when I see, the receptionist standing up and saying, keep quiet, go in a line. And there was nothing like that. In all that chaos that between managing the driver, the bus, and the everything there. So two of my colleagues were walking up to them. They were standing up, attending, smiling, and saying, please sit down. And ma'am is just meeting you. Within a minute, there was water and tea. I think everybody's problem is same. Design thinking is to go beyond the obvious and be able to manage a behavior that is 360-degree. Right? We can wish that I wish I have happy staff, I have happy this, and everything should be perfect. But how do you ensure it without a panic? Right? And you keep expanding the possibility of that design. And unless the head of the institution has a vision for the school, an ability to create scaffoldings to that vision, it is not possible, because feasibility plan does not come with a vision. Design thinking is to have a vision and then have a feasibility plan and do little things in the machinery for the outcome to be great, right? Last word, why, Debika blew my mind in those 10 minutes. And then she was saying, my staff goes off for drumming. I thought drumming must be some cleaning work or housekeeping work or something like that. But nobody thinks of class 4 employees. They do training for teachers, they do trainings for everybody, but class 4 employees and the reception and the admin go for drumming, like beating of the drums on a Tuesday in a particular way. And I think that's design thinking. And I'm so happy to be on this panel. These are the Debika I just met, Nisha and General Lalotra I know for some time. These are the room of beautiful minds, but implementers. And audience needs to know from the theory of design thinking, how do I do it tomorrow? And that is how, and I'm today sitting here like a student for the first time. So I'd love to hear whatever will happen. So you may not bring any question to me. You can bring the analysis to me, but I want all three of them to have that. How do they implement design thinking in their school? Also, how will they leverage technology to enable it to reach the last person? Right? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You mentioned about design thinking goes doing beyond obvious, right? What you're already aware about. So, coming to Nisha, ma'am, ma'am, would you like to share some light about the same pointers which Debika, ma'am, onto the same line, that how it could be more explained in a more detailed way, or if you're using in your respective school, how do you implement that?
So, hi Poonam, so lovely to see you, though it's virtually. And Poonam she's trying to be too modest when she says that she's sitting here like a student. But anyway, and thank you, Extramarks, for creating this forum. So, we are at the moment solving a problem. Having worked with schools, the premier schools of cities like Gurgaon, Jaipur, and Hyderabad, now I've moved on to rural space. We are setting up a progressive residential school for the underprivileged boys. And that's a big problem that we are trying to solve, which means why a progressive and a very high-end school, which would compete with the, the so-called premier schools of the country in terms of the infrastructure, the teachers, and what we intend to do there is entirely because that there is a problem that forget the maths and the English and the science, because that happens generally. It's the whole mindset of a poor kid that am I worth it or not? Do I deserve this or not? And this was my question to the chairman. And I asked him, why are we investing so much of money in one building? Probably we can put up 10 schools. And he said, there are such schools already existing. And we are the first of a business house which is setting up a high-end school for the underprivileged. And that was a problem he was trying to solve, which I did not even look at, though being in education. And he comes from a business background. And he gets no return because it's 100% free education for all the boys. And I'm reaching out to everybody and even to all of you through this medium very quickly that if you have any students who would deserve in BPL category, please refer them and we'll onboard them. So coming back to the point, that's a problem that you're trying to solve. And here comes a businessman who is not from the education background, but provides a solution. And we take that forward. So I think I would say that, more than understanding what should be done, for me, it's a lot to do with empathy. And, if we just demystify these big words like design thinking and critical thinking and digital learning and all of that, I think at the bottom is how empathetic are we to the real problems of life? And can we just pick up a few of them and then try solving them and collaborate with people, and a lot of new ideas will come in, because design thinking and, critical thinking is all calling for collaboration and coming up with new solutions and going beyond what is obvious to the eye. So that'll only happen because my eye only sees, even after 25 years of experience, I could not see a problem of how an architecture would help a child build his mindset, So the vision is that they come into the school and the minute they step in, it'll be intimidating for them in the beginning. But that's another problem we're trying to solve, that how do we not uproot them from their upbringing? They should be proud of their, the life and the parents that they the background that they come from. But at the same time, they also adapt to this new opportunity that they get and believe that, yes, they can do it, they are worth it. And from there, we start moving on. So for us, the problem is not the English, maths, and science. The problem here is how do we help them settle, believe in themselves, and then probably move on to the cognitive part of it. So, I guess I don't know if I've answered your question or not.
Absolutely, ma'am. So so I am picking up all the pointers over here and then understanding, because every one of you have a different version towards it. Now with you, ma'am, as you mentioned, being empathetic towards the problem that we have at hand, right? And looking from the other's perspective as well, it gives a much more deeper understanding of the specific problem that we have got. Thank you for that particular point, ma'am. Moving to Lalotra, sir. Lalotra, sir, adding to the same particular question, right? When we talk about the thinking of both critical and design, how exactly these skills are vital into the learner's day-to-day molding? And if you have implemented in the school, I would love if you can share any particular anecdote as well, sir. So you are on, you have to unmute, sir.
Sorry. Thank you. This is what happens when you get old. One has to be reminded when to start, how to start, and when to stop. So now, stopping is going to be difficult for you because you've asked me such a long question. When you're asking me this question, I was just actually thinking of what the two panelists have said before, Ms. Mukherjee and Mr. Bhakar. I totally agree with them that all this has got very high-end names. It's, sounding as if it's very new, but they are all ancient right from Mahabharat's time. And sometimes the people who are not into education may be the best people to sort of, as I said, open the third eye. So now let me narrate this through anecdotes, and all your questions, I think they'll get answered. So I was a young student, and I was a student of ad maths. It was called additional mathematics in Cambridge. So you had physics, chemistry, additional mathematics, but I was very fond of history, literature, and fine arts. Now, how in school can you learn so many subjects? It's not possible. You have to have a headmaster who has to be absolutely different who has to have empathy for the student. So he called me one day. He said, "Do you think you can manage to do all these?" I said, "I think I can do that." So he says, "Okay, you can appear in these examinations, but I'll have to check up, with Cambridge whether a student can appear without having sat in the classroom for subject." So I said, "Sir, you have the hobbies class. Can't I do it during that time?" So, so the journey started of what you're talking about today, critical thinking and design thinking at school 60 years back. So I was in the hobbies department, and I was very fond of. I mean, I did art, or within hobbies, I did many. And that time, I was very passionate about clay modeling, and I was doing a lot of pottery. And the headmaster would come and stand for nearly 40 minutes behind me, and I would wonder that why does he keep standing behind me? Till one fine day, he said, "Do you think I can give you a kiln? And would you like to?" Now you look at the critical thinking of that gentleman, because he began to start thinking as to what would be the end result at school if he did this sort of a thing. So, and that's how the ceramics department at the Lawrence School, Sanaa, came up. Other Sanaa was very famous for other things, but it didn't have pottery and ceramics. Now I carried this little thing that I said that the headmaster had so much of time to look at each student and then finally come up with a solution. So when I came to Mayo, I said I visited the classrooms, and I found that education, the system hadn't changed much. It was, a teacher and a student. There wasn't much of interaction, collaboration. The teacher would come in, 25 students to a section, 30, 35 minutes. And it was something like transfer of knowledge from an empty vessel, from a full vessel to an empty vessel. I mean, that's a quote. This is how our present system works. So I said that, look, how do I sort this out? So now that was the critical thinking. That was the problem solving. That how do I sort this out? There's a time, there's a subject, there are students, there's a teacher. Now these are the factors which are there. So in the army, what you call as critical thinking, it's an appreciation. So you lay out a problem, and then you say that, look, you want the class to be more collaborative so that the learning outcomes are better. So that's the problem I gave as far as the critical thinking was concerned. So I said, now, how do you do that? Because the teacher is in such a big rush. It was a big challenge, and let me tell you that. So I said, okay. And then, secondly, I thought that the students must be engaged in what they're doing. And that's the design part of it. And that comes into what the end user would like of what he's doing. And the empathy factor, the trials, everything has to take place. So I had a very young, bright teacher. In fact, at Mayo, all my teachers are doing something quite different for what they were not recruited for. The chemistry head of department was teaching music. You won't believe it, because no one would do a thing like that. The museumologist, I found that he was talented in stained glass and metalwork. So I shifted him into carpentry, metalwork, and stained glass and took him away from the museum. I found the maths teacher could explain shapes, volumes. So I said, you better go to the crafts department. So now, this whole thing began to change. Now, a lot of people say, how do you integrate design and critical thinking into that? Now, these were experiments being done, and you can't do too many experiments because you're playing with lives of children. Results matter, and the results must go up. The parents are also looking at a principal, the board is looking at a principal, and so are the students. But see the change. I brought in technology, and that's what the question is. How do you put in critical thinking and design into the modern digital world? So the first projectors or the smart class was not in the classroom where you teach academics, but it went into the carpentry department or woodwork department and into the craft department where they were teaching pottery. And that was my school learning that I'd got 60 years back from an eminent teacher, my headmaster, who was Oxford blue in boxing, but was very good in teaching. So everyone said, sir, why do you require a digital classroom? I said, look, it's not a workshop, it's a classroom because you're learning over there. I said, yeah, it's a workshop, but please treat the workshop like a classroom. So now I'll tell you how this got there. So I went one day and I said, guys, I'm going to give you a problem. It's a design problem. I said, you all need to design a small boat, which in the Mayo Lake, I want to try it out. The boat must carry 1 kg of lead. So I told one group that. I said, you will design a boat which will carry 1 kg of sand. And I called another group of 6 people. I said, you will design a boat which carries 1 kg of wool. And then I had many varieties of wood there. Light wood, cork, hardwood, wood you could work on, wood on which a great amount of effort was required. So I said, call the maths teacher there, and I got the people who are instructors, who are basically carpenters. They may not be very literate, but they're very skilled at carpentry. I said, Bhaiya, aap bhi idhar, maths teacher, you also there, and this brilliant teacher whom I said I made in charge of the head of the department. I said, you all sit with the students, with each group, and discuss what will be the shape, size to carry the volume of lead, sand, and wool. Now you can imagine the end result had to be a boat which could actually float in the Mayo Lake. But the amount of work which went into that designing, it was a huge learning experience. It had everything that we talk of, the appreciation, which is the critical thinking, and right up to the design which went into that. This is 2010. There was no looking back. The craft department immediately said, I said, can these boys design a pitcher which can hold 1 liter of water? So again, you found that all the departments get involved. And I said that needs to be thereafter fired, because the big kiln that I had seen in school. So they said, sir, what sort of a kiln would you require? Would you require a kiln in which you would fire? Would you require electric one? And the furnace came up, and then the heat, volumes, calculation. Now you can imagine in a school where you have combined the physics department, the chemistry department, the type of clay which is there. So students will be absolutely different. Now, the question is, can you create a Mayo everywhere in India? Can you get these type of teachers, and can you get this sort of equipment and all that? Technology permits all that. So with artificial intelligence and technology, one day I do hope that even our villages would have, if not the real workshop, will have something which they can experience through artificial intelligence and a digital classroom. A digital classroom need not necessarily be, I mean, that's another debate when they'll talk about teachers becoming redundant. They are not going to become redundant. Teachers are going to become more and more important. You require more teachers. Trust you me, all this technology will come in. It's a matter of time. And you'll have better teachers come in. Trust you me that. There's a place for both of them. That's for another occasion. So I've just given you some live example of how design was introduced at school. And then that sort of a thinking went for everything. I'll take a 30-second more.
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm muted or unmuted? I'm okay.
Yeah,
You can
I
hear
can
me.
hear.
All right. So what you're saying is, again, what I was telling you, a vision, okay? And to be able to implement that vision in your school, because you feel it's a residential school and nobody's in a hurry to get back home, so you can experiment with this idea. I have another thought about it. Sometimes even a day school can have this kind of design thinking if the head of the institute introduces this and frees them from the mundane approach to teaching. And even the teachers nowadays, when they go to a regular class, they've been teaching for last 20 years, they're bored. So they go like an automaton, like just proving whatever is there. I feel digital learning manages to do that job of one-way delivery, okay? And an interaction perhaps with a very, very high caliber person in a live class. But it takes from 100% your time to 25%, and your 75% can be spent on design thinking. Because Debika is in a day school. And I see design thinking. Because as a head of the institution, she's told people, this is my vision. Let's collaborate on that vision. We have to give the best results that are there. But end of the day, we have to create problem solvers, not 90%ers. Right?
Sorry, there's a correction there.
Yeah.
My people told me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the other way around. So my school and my
collaboration.
teachers had a
That's why,
vision. Yeah.
Debika, I'm telling you, vision, leadership, people say, comes from the top. I feel leadership comes from anywhere. You should be listening.
Everywhere. It comes from
what does a leader has to do is listen. We give up the habit of listening, so we don't imbibe new ideas. So that's leadership. I really feel you know, by trying a new idea, you allow others to have new ideas.
I agree with what Sev is talking about. When you say that classrooms cannot work in silos, because Socratic thinking is not linear in nature. You have to give opportunities in various ways, and our schools are not as blessed as yours, sir. We live in Mumbai and our schools are vertical, so we do have that constraint. However, transdisciplinary thinking is a way of life. It is a skill that we worship in our school because that's what makes us understand how the human brain functions. If water has to be taught as a subject in chemistry, it's got something very different. If it needs to be taught in languages, there's a different approach to it, but we can combine the two. We can bring in the geographies and the histories of civilizations that used water and things like that. I would just like to share something that we have done in our school based on what you were talking about. So we have a program, we call it the innovation program, and there's no age bar to it. A grade 3 child can walk into that lab any day, and there is a space assigned only because we feel sometimes you need the space, otherwise they can do it anywhere in the school. And our children are actually working on ways in which we can have a hydroponic garden in our school. Again, the lack of space has led to some design thinking and some innovation, because we do realize that problems are the cradle in which innovation grows and is nurtured, and we have figured out that hydroponic gardening is something that we can work with. Our teachers and students of economics and business studies are figuring out ways in which we can make a program, entrepreneurship program, and the soul component in our school is very big. So we want to use that money. So we want to have a business and we want to grow stuff, and then we want to sell it, and then we want to use it for service. And that whole plan has led to so many beautiful collaborations across departments, across sections.
May I?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, sir. Yes,
Please.
please.
So this is becoming like a storytelling session, and I think a lot is going to emerge from that, since Ma'am Mishra was very kind to say that General Lalotra established the Pinewood School, and Ma'am Bhakar said that she is now getting involved in setting up something for the underprivileged. Now, let me tell you another little story, and you'll see what the success is. A lot of people believe that you require a big campus. I was very fortunate to go to Mayo College, where there was a very big campus, and you could ask for the moon, and you got it actually over there. But let me tell you, in 1994, when militancy was at its peak and there was arty shelling and everything taking place, I looked at the children in that area, and I'm now talking about something called Punch Rajouri. That name keeps coming up again and again. And my wife was there. The families were permitted to come for about 2 months in a year. She specializes in special children, and she's from Delhi University, a lady of it. So I told her, I said, darling, you're here. And since we don't meet up each other, they were permitted to come. But as a commanding officer, I was most of the time in the post, and she was at something called the base. We would meet up, once in a week. So I said, why don't you think of helping me out? The children, this next generation is going to be uneducated. All the schools are closed. There are no teachers. There will be no teachers. I'll come and go. And many like me will come and go. Now, this is not the army's job. And this is the state education job. But I said that, do you think we can start a school and train people who can run the school after we have left? Now this is a Magsaysay award winning, and I say it myself. People don't, because we will hate to publicize our own achievement. There was no building, there was no land, there was no money. So what did we do? And I think this story should inspire many of you for critical thinking and design thinking, design of a school and critical thinking, whether it is possible or not possible. We had to come with a solution, a scientific solution. What is the school about? It is students and faculty. They could be anywhere. And I'll come to that when we say that, what do you call, in Bombay, in Bombay, there are what do you call, you and I are lucky. We've got a building and we got elite. In Bombay, there are many who can't afford to go to a school. So I'm talking something very similar, but under fire. So we set up a school. There was a forest hut. A hut doesn't mean a building. It means one room, and its roof had been blasted with all the mortar fire. So if you look through the roof, it looked like a sieve because all the shells had come through. So you could actually look through it. One single room, 10 feet by 12 feet. That was the beginning of the Pinewood School. And so we said, now, how do we get teachers? So I told my wife, you take some classes. We had a Sikh battalion. So the Granthi there could play the harmonium. So I said, you become the music teacher. We had our own one Jawan, very good. He was a physical training instructor. He became the PT instructor. We had a BSF battalion where there was a Muslim guy who could, carry out the namaz. So he became the religious teacher. And we began to find that everyone was a teacher there. So when I asked, can you do something? Every Jawan said, I can teach Hindi, I can teach English, I can teach. So there was everyone able to teach up to the primary level. So then I thought that, look, when I was a young guy, Punjab had something called JBT, Junior Basic Teacher. They were all 10th class qualified. And in the army, we have something called UEI, Unit Education Instructors. They're all 10th class, but they're teaching the next lot. And then if you go back to the Madras system of education, where you pick up the brilliant students and make them teach. Now, these are all designs. You'd be surprised. This school happens to be now the oldest army goodwill school. It's functioning, it's produced doctors, it's produced engineers, it's produced bureaucrats. And it's just moved on. It just moved on. And the students came and they began to teach each other. But we had a vision. And let me tell you, what was the fees of the school? This will interest each one of you. They said, we can't afford to pay the fees. I said, no, it can't be free. We in 1994 decided the fees of the school be 30 rupees. They said, we can't pay the fee. So I said, no, it cannot be had free. You have to pay. So I came up, there was a problem. Now they said, we can't pay the fees, so the students can't come. Now, how can you ensure that the students can come and the fees paid? So we said, okay, each one of you will cut 2 bundles of grass, headloads, from the hillside where our posts were, and the terrorists used to infiltrate through that grass, which was always, 3 feet high, 4 feet high. So what happened? Two things happened. One is the hillside got cleared of the entire grass. But the whole village would come and cut the grass. They found giving 30 rupees difficult, but they didn't find giving 2 headloads of grass difficult. They would come and dump it at the gates of the school. I would carry that grass in my army vehicles returning to Rajouri and give it there in the market. It would be sold, and that became the fees of the school. Have you heard a story like this? It's critical thinking, it's a design thinking. And
So, very interesting part of the same idea in continuity of this. So I was talking to Nisha, and when I asked her the design of the school, I thought plush building, great facilities, giving self-worth to the students, fantastic idea. But how they managed to weave in their background into the school is also in continuum of, sir, what you're saying. And it's so beautiful that 30 years hence, there is a young lady almost carrying out the same idea, perhaps with more money, but the idea. Okay. So, why don't you share, Nisha, what you're doing there in terms of, economics of it also, not just familiarity with rural structure, but how that becomes a source of income within the institution. Please, over to you, Nisha.
Thank you for calling me a young lady.
Yes.
So, this project that we're doing is for the underprivileged, being funded by the management, but with a clear understanding that it needs to be sustainable. And that's the bottom line, because there would be a time where, we may not be able to fund it, or we would not want to fund it, but the ecosystem needs to run its own. So the school is part of a 250-acre campus where we have an, area which is dedicated for preserving the indigenous breeds of cows, which are on the verge of extinction. And we're sourcing them out from all over the country and trying to build an R&D around milk, dung, and urine. And also trying to preserve the bulls, because bulls are no longer needed. So that's a problem that we are trying to solve, because bulls, because of the artificial insemination, they're being killed, and it's a cost. So there's a program that the management runs, where you can adopt a bull. So it's online, you can check that. Then there is, next to that is a naturopathy and a yoga college, which will soon start. So we've started with the plantation of herbal and medicinal plants around that. Next to it comes the school. Then there is a old age senior living. I would hate to call it old age. It's a very high-end senior living where people would come from not just India, but from all over the world. Now, the whole idea is that there are people from different economic stratas. There are different age groups exist in the same ecosystem, which is 250-acre campus. So there are plants, there are animals, and there are different age groups which coexist and work with each other. And the whole idea is, again, coming back to the point where I started, empathizing with each other, understanding how we live, how each one operates in their own space, irrespective of which economic background that they come from, because they all contribute in some way or the other. So it helps build a better understanding of who we are. And we're also trying to get children from all over the country, not just Nellore region, which is in Andhra, because being from the army background, you understand that when people come from all different states, there's a lot more sensitivity towards each other. There's a better understanding, and you stop looking at people with biases and beyond that, this one is South Indian, this one is North Indian, this is this, and you look at each other as humans, and a lot of solutions emerge from there as well.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
No, yeah.
My question was here. 2-3 problems were coming together. A great community has been created. So I had met a person who told me about a Swiss program in which they got the orphanages and the old age homes together, so that the parental absence of orphanages are covered by the adults that are there, and the nurturing is better both ways, right? And that is something that I was sharing with Nisha, that you have everything there, and that one last plug, you will have the, people with great background intelligence actually mentoring these children into the future would be another level of doing things. But in the whole conversation, sorry, the reason I came in here was that end of the day, whatever programs we run, there are 12 years of life of students that we are nurturing towards. We want them to be thinking people, but they go back into the society. They have to fit in into the society. They have to fit in into the structure, perhaps contribute more. So we cannot wish away the background of curriculum or wanting to keep them ahead of the game when they are out there also in the common competitive exams, etc. So again, it is not to because I belong to digital learning, but because my biggest mentor has been General Lalotra. He told me a long time ago that future of school education is, if you leverage technology, you can actually finish education in class 9th. The traditional education in class 9th, and all the programs that you're talking about, becoming great citizens, having innovators mindset, etc., there is enough space for the teachers and collaborators to create that design thinking program. Yet you have not made a maverick who does not fit into the system. Also, he might go in and expand the system and change the system, but we need to anchor him into that as an achiever. So my question to you is, in doing that, in creating such a beautiful program that you've done, how do you keep them ahead of the open competition with the rest of the schools who do not have such a program on a very basic curriculum level?
So, we rely on our past experiences, and I've been fortunate to work extensively in, experiential learning space. And at a time when we were only hearing these words, or probably we had not even heard these words. And now it's been like almost 20-25 years to that journey. So you rely a lot on that. And now, fortunately, what you just mentioned, you have technology as well. Because a remote place like Nellore, though we would, we are blessed to have a management which is willing to pay the salary which a deserving teacher should get, and hence will be able to attract talent. But yet, human beings do have a certain limitation. It could be of time, it could be our own intelligence, it could be our own desire to extend beyond a point, and that's where you leverage technology. And I think your organization is doing a great work in that space, along with many other names that come up to my mind. So, you blend the technology, you going forward after once the children have settled down. I would say that we're not in a world of competing with each other at all. That is one thing we're very conscious of, that we do not want to compete. We don't even want to bring in that culture, but we would want to bring in a culture where we are learning from each other. We open our gates to schools to come and listen to us, understand from us, and we are also willing to go and learn from wherever a learning opportunity exists. So when you do that, so you do the right pedagogy in the classroom, you pump it up with a good digital program, and you balance it out in terms of what percentage comes in at what place, because some people say it needs to be 40% technology, some people say, so I think that's debatable. The point is what concept you're talking. So let's say, if it's a geography concept, I would rely a lot on digital. If it's probably literature, maybe not so much. If it's mathematics, probably I'll blend both of them, because there's a lot to do hands-on, there's a lot to even learn from technology. Chemistry, digital is wow. It really helps me.
Or the way General Lalotra said, in your concept areas, at a conceptual level, the idea can be explained and the whole project can be thrown over across the subjects to collaborate and create a solution. But
Yes.
at least conceptual clarity is taken away, and that's not a confusion area. The way we use, Nisha, the calculator, now we take calculator because a problem has to be solved. Nobody is looking at my BODMAS anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
That how to do.
So true. And even for you to converge at some point where, you call it a thematic learning or whatever terminology you would
Yeah.
want, it's very
Yeah.
important that children have a sound conceptual understanding so that they know how do I apply that understanding. And when it comes, where a chemistry and a geography or English comes together. And I tried it out even in my Jaipur school, because that's a very traditional community, a very traditional society. And even though the parents have gone to schools, you would say there's the first generation where they're coming to something which is a more progressive thinking school. And we ran the themes from grade 1 until grade 8, and where there was a complete integration of subjects, and it moved so beautifully. And then moved on to a place like Nellore, where we dealt with underprivileged children, because there's a third school that we are setting up for the underprivileged. And those two schools where we tried, one with the Andhra board and the other one with the the CBSE board, and I was amazed and floored by the limitations that I thought I had in my mind, whether it was digital. So we used a lot of digital learning in the CBSE underprivileged school. We used a lot of thematic based learning, a lot of teacher training, and everything worked. So it didn't feel that children would be a constraint, or a space would be a constraint, or even the resources would be a constraint. I think that basically comes in when we start taking the lead. So when we don't take when I say we as a head of the school, we don't take the lead everywhere, a lot of things happen, because then you call in people and you tell them where's the problem and what could be the possible solution, and you could be a provider, because you play that role where you have an access to all the facilities and you can bring that in. So
I would like to share two ideas with you, all of you, where design thinking worked. When we begin this whole program of digital learning, there were 2, 3 problems that we saw. One is a problem of how we interpret assessments. I always had, as an educationist, I had a problem that assessments were a measure of proficiency. To me, for the longest time, assessments are a sieve to judge the learning gaps. That's why a child who's so bright in junior classes suddenly becomes not so bright in class 10 or grade 12, because teachers were so focused on how much he did correctly, not focusing on why did he not understand the concept that was not correct. So somewhere in my mind, for the longest time, I wanted assessments to be perceived as identifying learning gaps and doing your subsequent classes basis that learning gap. And even if through trainings, etc., you brought in this idea and tried to change the mindset, it's a mass. There are 2 lakh teachers across the country. How many classrooms do you go and change this concept, which is drilled over last 60 years? So I thought that was the best way for the assessment on leveraging technology. You can create auto interventions. So even if the adult in the scheme of things doesn't intervene at the right time to fill your gap, at least you in your self-test can actually learn as you go. And anytime you feel there is a gap, you can go back, replay, understand it deeply, because your 12 years don't come back to you. And the gaps you carry, it is very difficult to figure them later on. So I thought at a scale, changing the whole approach to assessment technology with its adaptive testing and permutation combination of how a problem is looked at is a very good tool. Second thing was, how was international curriculum really different from Indian curriculum? Now it is converging, but initially, Indian curriculum was 80% concept heavy and 20% would be application. And how do you flip the way of thinking from the onset without saying there's a convergence with international curriculum? So every chapter, every topic that we had, the normal chronological, digital, like any digital company will create with animations, easy to use. We introduced two tools, which were very inane tools, but now suddenly they make sense after 15 years. One was the one question we was asked a child that what is it that scares you the most when you go to the next class? Sure, it's the way Debika said, children sometimes come with the most interesting answers. I got the most interesting answer, and he said, book moti ho jati hai. Your book size starts becoming bigger. Okay. So I said, is it an idea? Because in MBA, we do PERT diagrams, etc. That when mind map was getting just about fashionable, I said, if all the chapters could be reduced to one single page of the hierarchy of what is going to be in a chapter. And what happens, it takes the fear out of that learning and creates a mind map in your head of the pedagogical hierarchy of interlinking subjects and actually understanding them. Then you can start the exploration. When you do not understand that concept and you learn it piecemeal, you don't know the elephant. You only know the trunk and a leg and whatever. So one was the mind map without beat, whether you're English, math, science, social science, anything. I get it on a paper. Okay. Second thing was every topic had 5 case studies. Okay, now case study, my thought was we have to make them problem solvers. So we give lectures, go to seminars, some maverick teacher, wonderful heads like you, create a program. But how do you make a best practice, a mass acceptable way of thinking? You bring it gently into the familiar, introduce the unfamiliar until it becomes an interesting habit and you change, right? So very excited teachers would say, आपने जो 5 case studies ही दिया है सिर्फ. The lazy ones will say, case study का क्या है, curriculum में नहीं है, right? But without realizing, inadvertently, now it's becoming, when the class is boring, let's throw a case study and start a discussion. And in some time, the flip has happened. Now, when the NEPs come, now they are perforce finding ways that we have to incorporate a way of thinking, right? So I think this is such a silent, democratic way of changing a pedagogical pattern that has been set in our minds. And then we need to appreciate the power of that, not power of animation running. You can see a Disney movie, but the pedagogical principle of reaching 1 million children with a way of thinking. So when you give good ideas, our mind only goes into a sieve. Okay, how can I simplify it? And how can I demystify it? And how can I take it to 1 million? And that technology allows.
So, Poonam,
Sorry for interrupting. I'm very sorry.
No, I want
Please,
that.
ma'am.
Sorry, I'll need to leave. That's why.
Yeah.
Very sorry.
Yes. You were
Nisha,
saying
ma'am.
something, Nisha?
yeah. So, Mr. Chatterji, nice meeting you. Hope to see you soon. Yeah.
Thank you very
So,
much, ma'am, for joining.
Thank you.
What you just mentioned, technology, I completely agree with that, because we've been using some platforms where, there's also a limitation of a teacher, there's also a limitation of how much can one take in and how many teachers do you keep changing, plus how much time do you have to keep empowering them, and that also takes time. So when you want to start, so you have the teacher as well, and with the technology, so it throws up the misconceptions that are being built in the classroom teaching. And it also provides a solution for the teacher to go back and step by step, it explains that if the child has performed a question or solved a question in a certain way, probably this is a misconception that exists. And it also gives a remedial, not just to the child, because the assessment is also about the teacher, how she's teaching into the classroom. And that, she automatically, besides the trainings that you give, the digital is indirectly providing a training to the teacher, because no teacher wants to teach the same way then. They go back, they reflect, they look at it, because it also provides you with a complete sheet at the end of the day. How did your children perform? And where did they go wrong? And what is the average? How are they doing vis-a-vis a state or a country? And that's where, automatically you get a real-time sense of where you are and where is a gap.
What you were telling instinctively, now you can actually see it documented and clear.
Yeah, because anything which is subjective is open to debate.
Yeah.
I can disagree, and then a lot of emotions come in play.
Yeah, yeah.
It still takes away all of that and provides you with a solution which is real time. It's not biased, and it is just right there for you to learn and move on. And of course, now in the space that we are, you can't even deny that you can ignore it. Over to you, Major General.
So, if I may add, now the debate about technology in education, I think that debate has more or less closed, actually speaking. So the people who are still raking this up, that whether digital technology has a role, I think it's now past. I think especially after COVID, everyone understood that, look, not only you got to live with it, but it was a great motivator. Before that, we were in a minority who were promoting that, look, you better go digital. You better have smart classrooms, and if you can't have a smart classroom, you need to have a smart gadget. I always said that, look, if you are willing to provide farmers with urea, which is subsidized, why don't you provide free gadgets for studies? How you tackle the internet problem, that is part of it. Now, if you really look at how the rocket has gone up and how Chandrayaan has gone up, it's progressive. You've seen that the first rocket being carried to the launch stage on a cycle. So we were part of that era when we actually were carrying things and people didn't believe us. Teachers felt threatened. They thought that the teachers have become more important.
Yeah.
Now there is a head of department of the computers, he's got fancy names in different schools, and he's got 5-6 more guys to support the teachers. The teachers are getting real-time feedback. During COVID, the people who benefited the maximum are not the have but the have-nots.
Yeah.
Trust you me, it are the have-nots who have benefited the maximum. I'm privy to it, and just for Ma'am Bhakar's information, Extramarks was there, and Extramarks were very keen because we were doing something for DLF, and we had picked up some very brilliant children, outstanding children, and we had just integrated them into mainstream education, and they were in class 6th and 9th. They have been picked up after psychometric testing, academic testing, interviews. In fact, it was more difficult than an IS interview. And suddenly COVID came in, but we found a way, and Extramarks rose to the occasion. They opened up the godown. We sent people in PP. This is all history. It's all forgotten. And the gadgets reached the homes of these people. The way 4 of us are interacting right now, and we can see each other, and I see there are 275 other participants who have joined in, which is a very large number because people are busy with their normal things. A lot of people feel that, look, schools are required. I am one chap that, look, you cannot have education without schools. But technology has given you the facility to bring the best teacher in every child's hand. So what will happen is that you may not have a very good teacher in your school, but the student will be able to access modules or lectures or whatever you want to know of the best teacher. India has to only bring, you don't require. So Pythagoras made that famous, the Pythagoras theorem. Now, you can actually bring a Pythagoras into the homes of every child instead of someone interpreting what Pythagoras said. And the others become just facilitators. So I personally believe is that digital technology would have a lot of role to play. However, the design element that we're talking about, the design thinking, firstly, at teachers' level, we have to get into the design thinking as to how do we design our teaching in such a manner that students benefit the maximum. And critical thinking has to be really done basically at the level right now of the management and the principals and the senior lot as to how to integrate all that.
Nisha and sir, I just wanted to share with you one conversation I had yesterday, day before night. So my cousin is in the IBM innovator cell for last 20 years. And once in a while, we have this philosophical chat of future of digital learning and everything. And day before, I sent him a message, this is the era of mind, finally, that every unique mind is going to be in a center stage, and no layers of adults and previous generations are going to ebb that mind. So he writes back to me, let's talk about India's story. He said, you're right, but our education system is not allowing these minds to fly. And he said, you're designed at a higher education more than in the schools are still experimenting, but the higher education is not. I said, why are you saying that? So he said, India is known to be the digital leader, but there is no leadership in new ideas. They are still putting together whatever ideas are there and then coming up with solutions, because India always, jugaad is India's thing. So solution, we have to find a solution tomorrow. We find solutions. That's why we are ahead in the game. But we are not developing or creating institutions that allow innovators to think of new ideas. And then we'll be true leaders. And I thought it was interesting. And then in the design thinking, that is where the role comes. Your regular learning way of thinking may be given to digital learning, but where the leadership of teachers and the educators comes is how they create innovators. How do they allow that kind of thinking, of application of ideas? How do they identify problems and solve it with new ideas? So that would be the greatest contribution in the next 1 decade, that we create innovators who will then drive the country, the world, for that matter.
You're right, Poonam, because, before we get down to, nurturing innovators, we at least need to allow thinking in the classroom.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be the first step. And yes, every time you hear principals and all of us cribbing about 10 different things, which probably we say, oh, do not permit us to do X, Y, Z, or else we would have done it. But somewhere we will have to start. And even if, let's say, we don't know how to do it, digital comes and helps you out. It challenges you, to think at least beyond where you are at the moment, and it at least helps you take one little step. And there's so much available already out there for free, even if you can't afford it. So there's enough. And I think after the COVID, the best thing that's happened is that there was a boom, we all were confused, and now it's settling down. And I think the quality stuff has now started coming out for us to use and leverage that into the classrooms, even if we have our own limitations. And somewhere I think it just needs to start, because if it can happen in the rural areas, it can definitely happen in the urban areas. But it's our own mindset which also needs to be challenged.
I think that's the first thing that needs to be challenged.
Yeah.
There's a question which has been asked by one of the ladies who's attending the seminar. She's asked is that, look, students, they have gadgets, but they're not interested in studies. So how do we sort out that problem? So that's the question. And I think that question has been asked, and I think we should address that question, if I may.
Yes, sir. Sir.
Yes, please.
So this is a very natural thing that you'll have this sort of a problem is that, look, despite giving everything which is possible, the student is just not interested in studies. Now, how do you tackle that? How do you get that student back on the rail over there? I think this requires, every student has a set of teachers, 4 or 5 teachers. And I think um, the teachers have to collaborate with each other to find out, is this the response of the student, a similar sort of a response with the other teachers? That's the first thing that the teachers must do. Just have a private chat and say that, look, I am finding this challenge with this teacher. Secondly is get to know your student very well.
Yeah.
The person may be having little empathy, little taking to a side and just have a chat and say that the maybe the child wants to be noticed. And
Sir, but I also feel there are two solutions to this. One is we don't realize that when we give a child a gadget, we open the world to him, but we never give him structure. His mind requires scaffolding to decipher the information that is there. So teachers, after giving technology, do choose a lazy path of saying, "De to diya, learn karke aa jao." But they need to trigger interest. They need to ask the right questions. And I think it is not about answers or learning, but the pathways that teacher create by asking good questions. For that, all of us as adults have to actually apply ourselves of how do I make this learning process interesting. Because we come from a textbook bred generation, we feel getting technology is interesting. No, we need to trigger interest, love for knowledge and exploration by asking the right questions. And moment the teacher gets engaged, their children come back and then they love learning. What do you think about it?
Has to
I
be a
agree.
blend of it has to be a blend of the cognitive struggle as well as the emotional struggle. The both of them need to come together. You
Yeah.
just can't hand over and exit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, panelist. It was a wonderful story, telling where you all shared your personal vision, personal anecdotes, how it worked, what are the tools which all of you have used. Unfortunately, with the time constraint, we have to wrap up the particular session now. I have taken a lot of the pointers over here. Now, before I go ahead with the further, point of conclusion, I like each one of you to share one line of advice for our audience regarding the importance of integrating critical and design thinking in education in one line. We'll start with Lalotra, sir.
When you ask a general, you can't ask one line. You have to ask for a paragraph. But
Yes,
I would
sir.
say,
Paragraph.
but yes, today we need to be conscious of both critical thinking and design thinking, and it starts at the school level. So whatever we are doing, we have to firstly identify the problem, make a statement, explain it to the children, and then give a way forward, a suggested way forward, and say that, can you recommend your way forward before you step into the project?
Sure, sir. Thank you very much, Lalotra, sir. Poonam, ma'am, please.
I have 2 points.
Please,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. Point number one, again, be fearless in adopting technology. Second, leverage technology to create the designs that you require to change, bring critical thinking. Because critical thinking is not a one classroom solution. It has to be a paradigm shift of how India is approaching education. So I would love that today all educationists actually have some kind of respect for what edtech companies are experimenting with. I struggle with that. So that is my request to everybody. So, and we all are collaborators in this journey. And this is the biggest idea. We have done so many elevates. this idea of design thinking has to come from a implementation point of view into every classroom, and we should effect change. So, like general, one paragraph for me also. Be fearless in using technology.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Nisha, ma'am?
So one thing that I feel we need to establish very clearly is that this is not anything new that we need to be scared of. It's nice that we are talking about it, and with the digital platforms, what Poonam just mentioned, that we need a structure. It'll allow us to give that structure to our actions and to our thoughts. So we've been doing it. Now let's do it more consciously in a more structured manner so that we get effective results.
Yeah.
And the second is that there is enough empathy and understanding that digital is required. So we do appreciate the efforts of the tech companies. The only issue comes in where probably at times, we don't get the budgets to do it. When I say we, I'm talking about school heads. And that's where, we stop. But I think if beyond that, there's any other reason which is stopping us, for example, we don't want to challenge ourselves, then I think that would be really foolish on our part, because we don't have a right to stop the youngsters from moving forward, because they would. And, we have that moral and social responsibility to do it. So I think we need to move ahead with time and take it forward and come together. And I think solutions are everywhere, and all of us are struggling in the same zone. So it's not as somebody's learned enough and the other one is just at a starter's level. We all are somewhere or the other, we can collaborate with each other, and that should be very empowering to know that, okay, I'm not alone in this space.
Yeah.
So I would leave
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you very much for your insights over here, ma'am. I like to recap. There are certain key takeaways which I have got over here. So my point number one goes over here as discovering how critical and design thinking can transform traditional classroom for a farther more engaging and effective learning experience. Learn practical strategy, as Poonam ma'am was also mentioning there, to foster creativity, problem solving, and innovation. Explore the role of technology in promoting critical learning and skills among the student on day-to-day basis, gaining insights about the adaptability and future readiness in education, because students are going to go beyond either with us or without us. So it's better to be with them on every given step. So as we come to the end of our webinar, I'd like to express my gratitude to all our panelists for their enlightening contribution and to our audience for their active participation. By fostering the synergy of critical and design thinking in the realm of digital pedagogy, we are not teaching for the future, we are actively shaping it. So please don't be discouraged. I am sure with all the personal anecdotes, with all the different versions of ideas being shared, we have answered your queries. In case we have not answered, we will for sure get back to you. In closing, I leave you with the words of visionary educator John Dewey. He says, education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself. As we weave the fabric of education for the future, let us remember our mission is not confined within the four walls of a classroom. It extends to the vast horizon of innovation and adaptability. Together, we embark on a journey of equipping learners with the creative thinking skills that will not only help them to navigate through the future, but also be the architect of that future. Thank you all for joining me on this transformative quest. We look forward to seeing you all. Please do share your feedback to all the amazing participants we had. There are about 300 plus participants we had on a Saturday, which is an amazing number for us. So all the attendees who participated will receive a certificate of participation from our side. Stay tuned on to our official website, which is www.extramarks.com/emelevate for the recording of this webinar and details of our upcoming sessions as well. It was wonderful to have everybody over here. Panelists, if I just request 1 second, I would love to click a snap.
I like the way Poonam started setting her hair.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. It was so wonderful to have you. It was amazing session.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you so
Poonam.
much. And
Thank
thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you for having me at very short notice. I want to apologize to Anurag. The fault was mine. I had slipped up on informing him that I'm available.
No, sir, good you came. This was the right panel to have a discussion. Your contribution was very critical to this discussion. And thank you, Nisha. It was a pleasure.
you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much.